Hey, how you doing there again, folks? Me again, of course, Brandon Wenzel. Come back at you with another confession off my concert confession series. Yes, indeed, folks, Concert Confessions is a vlog series I've been doing for a little while now, where I go over there and I like to yammer on about all types of live music events that I've attended recently. It's an opportunity for me to go over there and confess my concert sins, to recount my recreational revelries, and to muse over my musical misadventures. Basically, it's just an opportunity for me to go over there and stand on a soapbox and say, look at these cool things I did. But we'll get to that. Folks, it is a super simple format. I am just going to go over there and talk about, whatever most recent concert I attended, and that'll be the whole thing. Whilst I'm doing all that, I am in my back room today, which means we get Peter Can Thunderbolt poster. Peter Can Thunderbolt poster. Whilst I am doing all that, folks, I am doing something else. What is it? I'm wearing a super cool shirt. Folks, when I wear super cool shirts, I always like to highlight the super cool shirt. What super cool shirt am I wearing for you today? Happens to be my Ninny shirt. Yeah, it's such a cool design. Which is, it works on two levels, because for one thing, it ties in kind of to the band that I'm going to talk about in this particular episode. And on top of that, this was actually the band that I featured in my previous episode of Concert Confessions. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Ninny, she is a Taiwanese singer and musical performer. She was on America's Got Talent, and now she has a band, and they got to tour, and they're awesome. I'm a big fan. I love, what's basically been termed as folk metal, combination of sort of traditional instruments and, more contemporary metal styles. And Ninny is fantastic. I actually went over there, aside from doing the Concert Confession series about the show that I attended first, I actually had videos of hers that I attended. So you can go over there and check those out. Those are on my channel. If nothing else, I'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction as far as her music is concerned, because I think she's incredible. But anyway, what are we doing here today, folks? What's going on? Well, folks, this is Concert Confessions, episode number 17, concert number 190. I'm getting so close to 200. This one is going to be me specifically recounting my experience going out to see Nine Inch Nails and Boys Noize. I don't even care, you can see my gimpy tooth. I'm so happy. Now, there is a format that I like to follow with this particular program that I do, where I like to go over there and sort of talk about the various aspects of, the whole event. The first thing that I always like to start off with is the venue. In this case, the venue was a place called the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. The United Center is famously the home of the Chicago Blackhawks and the Chicago Bulls. I had not been out to the United Center since I was very small. I think I might have seen a Bulls game there once when I was very little. For sure, I definitely saw some like Disney on Ice type of stuff when I was little. But that was years and years ago. I don't even think I was in double digits at that point in my life. So it had been quite a while. And honestly, I was a little bit concerned because, whenever I would tell people that that's where the show was, everybody would always kind of be like, oh, man, and the drive and, the parking and, the area. And I was like, oh, shit, okay. To the extent where at one point I was considering just commuting in and then, taking, a taxi or an Uber there. But after looking it up on the map and everything, and, I was like, I'll give it a shot, see how it goes. And actually, point for point, it was easy enough for me to get to. Wasn't that bad of a drive. And then when it came to the parking, the parking, if you go to the main parking, because they tried to wave me into the main parking, it's $60 to pay. And I was like, no. And then even if you want to go to the offshoot parking, that's $40. I went over there and drove a few blocks down, and I parked in a neighborhood spot where I didn't see any tags or anything saying I couldn't park there. And it worked out just fine. I ended up, so what with the United Center being it's a stadium, that's what it is. So I went over there, and it was a bit of a trip. My seats were decent. I was on the second level. I wanted to get better seats. I was willing to pay for better seats, but the show sold out so fucking quickly, man. I got the best that I could get. But again, for what they weren't bad. I had a good view of the stage and stuff like that. Things were a little bit far away, but I could have been way worse off. It was a little bit of a head trip for me though, because it's kind of high up off the ground, and I don't do well with heights. So I definitely had like kind of a little bit of vertigo, when I was first up there. I did get a little bit better as time went by, but and honestly, my seats ended up working out pretty nicely because like where I was seated, even though my area was full, like everybody showed up for their assigned seats. I was right next to like one of the entrances, so I actually only had one person sitting next to me. Right on the other side of me was just a railing, so I was like, cool. And the people who were next to me were nice enough. I'll kind of talk more about that with the crowd, but yeah, it wasn't too bad considering how many people were there. Like, it could have been much more claustrophobic, but and I did appreciate the fact that what it was like stadium size and everything, it had actual seats. So like I was able to sit for most of the show because I'm fat and old. So about the only thing that was a little bit annoying was that they went over there and they changed the door open time. And although they did send out like an email on it and stuff, like when you went to go check the tickets, it still had the original date time. So me and a bunch of other people were sitting there like, what the hell, man? It was supposed to open up half an hour ago. And as a result, everything took longer. Everything was delayed by half an hour. But all things concerned, like the United Center is actually a really cool spot. Way too expensive on the inside, though. Oh, man. I paid $10 for a single Pepsi. Like, I didn't want to do it, but I was so fucking thirsty, man. And, I hated myself for it. Hated myself for it. But then I used the bottle to just refill. I used the tap water to refill it, which was like, whatever, man. But overall, it was a nice sized venue. It accommodated the setup well because there was an A stage and a B stage. They had like a full stage set up for like the band stuff, like the actual instruments and all that. And then they had a smaller B stage kind of in the middle of the area where it was set up for basically like the synthesizers, the keyboards and stuff like that. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that later. So, and I mean, all things concerned, like it worked out pretty nicely. Like it was a good spot and it was a good size spot for the amount of people. So, yeah, all things concerned, like the venue was solid. No problems with the United Center. The sound was great. Like the sound quality was perfect, as you'd expect from a big place like that. Let's talk about the bands though, because obviously that's the meat of this whole thing. So basically you really only had one band, and then you had, so the first performer was an individual who goes by Boys Noize. I had never heard of this individual. I figured it was a band. I originally thought that he would perform on the smaller stage. That's where things would go. So it was much to my surprise when they went over there and, maybe about an hour or so, I'd say, before Nine Inch Nails took the stage, there was a DJ who came out who basically went over there and did an EDM set, which was fine. I'm okay with EDM stuff. It was kind of an industrial EDM sound, so I was a little bit more like, okay, it kind of fits the Nine Inch Nails vibe a little bit. And like the guy was totally into it. He was like going for it, man. It was like, good on you, man. Like most of the people did not care, if I'm being honest, but there were some people, to be fair. And then I eventually realized, it took me a long time, that was Boys Noize. That was the guy. And I was like, oh, so they're not a band. It's an individual. I love Nine Inch Nails, but I will be entirely honest. There has never been a band or artist who has toured with Nine Inch Nails in any of the times that I've seen them that I have given a shit about. Like, and I say it like, they had like Jesus and the Mary Chain, they had Bauhaus. Like, I know these are like iconic acts, in their way, but I don't personally care about them. But Boys Noize, for what it was perfectly fine. It was a fun EDM set. He had a few songs in there where he sampled Nine Inch Nails stuff. So it was like, okay, it was pretty cool for what it was. But I don't know that we needed an hour of it, if I'm being honest. It kind of set the mood, but at a certain point, I think myself and everybody, even the people who were into it, were kind of like, okay, this could be done now. But it wasn't a bad way to, to open up the show. I personally would have loved to see like an actual band, but the Boys Noize thing played into things. So let's talk about Nine Inch Nails. Let's talk about Nine Inch Nails. And see, what I was talking about with the shirt, Nine Inch Nails, Ninny. See? That timed itself out really well. I got to see Nine Inch Nails, and then right before that, I got to see Ninny. I love Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails has been my favorite band slash musical project, however you want to, sort of compartmentalize it, ever since I was a 9-year-old kid. And that's no joke. Like, that's a real thing. First time I ever listened to their stuff, I went over there and I found one of my, at the time, stepbrothers. He had a copy of The Pretty Hate Machine. It was tucked away under loads of crap, and I managed to dig it out and find it, and it blew my mind. And since then, I've taken pretty much whatever opportunity I can to try and see Nine Inch Nails perform. Usually, they play like one-off shows or big festivals, things like that. So my opportunities have been somewhat sparse because I don't really do like big festivals or anything like that. I'm more of a singular show type of thing. So this was actually only my fourth time getting to see them, and it had actually been several years since the last time I'd seen them perform. So I was really excited for this. It was kind of a birthday present to myself, and it was awesome. The last time I'd seen Nine Inch Nails perform, it was at a much smaller venue. There was kind of a little bit of a downturn with Nine Inch Nails for a little bit. There was this period where I kind of think that, they'd faded a little bit from the zeitgeist. But that said, that fucking tour still sold the hell out, so it's not like they underperformed in that regard. But, this is my first time seeing them in a bigger venue since, I was a teenager. And it was really cool. Even though, I was nowhere near close enough to being, near the band that I normally like to be when I go out to these shows. It was still like, man, like the production level of everything was incredible. For one thing, the context of the the A and B stage came into play when they opened on the B stage, on the smaller one. And like I said, that one was literally just one for, where they had like the synthesizer set up. So you would usually have Trent, Atticus, and occasionally Boys Noize. They would be the ones on there. Although, at certain points, like they had the guitarist up there at one point and stuff. And so that's where they began things. And it was cool to have it set up like that, in the way that it was. They also had lots of cool lighting and like smoke effects and stuff. And it was like, again, man, just the level of production was like, it was definitely the best produced, I think the best produced show I've seen overall. And I've seen some really great shows, but like, man, just like, it's Nine Inch Nails, so you had all these cool visual effects and stuff like that. And then the way they would do it was they would go over there, they'd perform, 2 or 3 songs on the small stage, then they made their way to the larger stage, where again, they had like the drums and everything set up, and you even got a drum intro from, is it Josh Freese? I apologize, because I know his name, I just can't, I know his last name is Freese, I think it's Josh Freese. So you got like a drum intro from him, and he's an incredible drummer, so that was awesome. And it just, man, did it hit, And for me, like, I love all eras of Nine Inch Nails, but I definitely came up more when they were in their heavier period. So when they got on stage and you started hearing, the heavier songs, you started hearing, March of the Pigs. I was going to say Mr. Self-Destruct, but they did play that, but they played it on the small stage, actually. Had like a whole, that was like, and I loved it. And they used the visual effects to like incredible effect, because they had like these like drapes hanging down from the ceiling like over the stage area, and you could see through them. You could still see the band, but they would project stuff on them. And so like you would have things like when he was performing the song Copy of a, and they used that to go over there and have like these different visual effects where it was like actual copies of Trent Reznor on these like delayed reaction type of thing. It was so fucking cool, man. They had certain tentpole songs, and of course I was loving that. The set in general, I was a big fan of. I loved pretty much everything that they had on there. They had a few deeper cuts. There was some stuff on there that I would like to have seen more of. Being the Pretty Hate Machine is like one of my absolute favorite albums. I would have liked to have seen more from that. But they only did Head Like a Hole. But, I mean, Head Like a Hole is head like a fucking hole. No doubt, pretty much like the coolest sort of like holy shit moment was when they went over there and did their rendition of Closer, which is, that's the biggest Nine Inch Nails song there is. And they did it on the smaller stage because they went from the big, or it started on the small, went to the big, went back to the small, and then went back to the big. So on the second round of the small ones, they came back, and the way that it was set up, there was like this whole overhang thing that came down and like converted. And so you had like sort of like almost like these like disco ball type sort of LED lights set up, and like it was fucking awesome. And then on top of that, they were playing a remix version of the song, so it had a little bit more of a slight kind of dancey beat to it. And man, did that fucking like I just got the crowd going, man. You know, it's closer. Uh, they ended up finishing out with "Hurt," which was perfect song to tap, to go over there and finish off on. It's another iconic song, and it brings things down a little bit. That's the end, and it was great, man. Like from start to finish, I loved it. About my only criticisms for it would have just been, again, there were certain, I would have wished certain eras were a little bit more represented, but again, they had to kind of, they had to go over there, because I think they ended up playing about 20 songs, so you can't complain with that. But I definitely would have, would have liked to have heard Terrible Lie, I'm just saying. But, and really about the only other thing was just I was kind of surprised, not exactly surprised, but there was no real crowd work, from Trent or anybody. It really was just kind of the set. And I mean, he thanked the crowd for being there and stuff like that. He wasn't a dick about it. And Trent isn't historically known as being a crowd work type of guy. But, that was just one of those things. I like a bit of crowd work. I'm just saying, it helps make the experience a little bit more special. But overall, man, like the effects, everything about it, it was just so fucking cool, man. I was on cloud nine the entire time. Cloud 9 Inch Nails. Let's talk about the crowd. Crowd, the place was packed. I mean, fucking, it was basically filled with the exception of like the backing area, because that area wasn't available for sale because you wouldn't have been able to see shit. The place was filled, man. It was nice to see, because like I knew that the show had sold out really quickly and everything. But it was so great to see, everybody there, because like at first, it was kind of a trickle in type of thing. But eventually, you did, it was there, and it was okay. I was like, all right. And by the time everything really got going, it was proper, and it was so great to see because, like I said, man, I've been listening to 9 Inch Nails since I was a little kid. And I know that a lot of other people like them, but, you're trying to fill this big capacity fucking place, man, and they did. And you could feel the love, man. You really, really could. And as far as like, my neighbors in my area was concerned, everybody was really cool. I didn't really talk with them all that much or anything, but like they were nice enough. They kept to their personal areas. I will mention, thought it was really nice. There was a guy who had certain physical, limitations. He was sitting kind of in an area off to the side of me. And at one point, he went to go sit down, and the chair just wasn't going to hold, just wasn't going to go over there and stay in place because of kind of how awkwardly he had to sit in it. And so he ended up falling down, and, almost immediately, there was like about 4 or 5 people there to go over there and help him up and help him get seated properly. So I just thought that was a nice little thing. It was really cool, and, to anybody who might see this who was in that crowd with me, you helped make it even more special for me. I really do mean that. Let's talk about the merch real quick here. I will mention, I like the fact that they had a merch table set up outside the venue. And it was legit. It wasn't like just bootleggers, it was like a legit official thing. Because one of my biggest concerns was getting in there and then having to fight people for merch, right? But no, it was outside. They had plenty of stuff available. And I got a couple things. First thing, where's the thing? Boom! 9 Inch Nails shirt, as you'd expect. I don't even think they had any merchandise for Boys Noize. Maybe they did and I didn't notice, but and it's just a simple design, but like that's really kind of what you want. You want the NIN logo on the front, and then you've got, this is the tour shirt, so you've got all of the tours. And yeah, man, it's not the most interesting design, but again, like it's, for me, honestly, exactly what I wanted from a 9 Inch. Like, I want the fucking NIN logo on the front. But that wasn't the only shirt I got. Boom, I got another one. This one, a little bit more involved. Because you go over there and you got, on here, got the whole setup. Goes over there, how'd you get so big? How'd you get so strong? Very cool. And then, got the NIN logo on the back on this one. So, and still got the little tour thing on it. So that made me super duper happy. Like, that was the thing where it was like, come hell or high water, I'm getting at least one Nine Inch Nails shirt. They were a little bit expensive. They were about $45 a piece. I've paid more, I've paid less. I couldn't complain too much though. It worked out well. So, let's talk about the pros and cons real quick, and then I'll give it a final grade. Pros and cons, the venue, I think, was a big pro. I think the United Center really worked well. I think Nine Inch Nails could have gone over there and sold out a bigger venue. Like, I was expecting them to perform in Tinley Park. That was actually the first time I ever saw them, was at the Tinley Park show. That has a bigger capacity. I think they could have sold that out. I really do. Because it'd been a while since a Nine Inch Nails tour, and people fucking love Nine Inch Nails. So, but it was, like, I think that for the size that it was, for the intimacy that it had, for the setup that they had for it, I genuinely think the United Center was a kind of the perfect venue in this instance. Another pro, the crowd. The crowd was great, man. Like I said, everybody was into it. The one thing I will say that I noticed versus previous years when I'd seen Nine Inch Nails, a lot more people, including myself, who were seated for most of the show. I did eventually stand up for the last few songs, but it's like, we are getting older, so, we got to take it where we can get it. But yeah, another pro, the merch. I mean, it's not the greatest merch in the history of merch, but, like, it's merch, and I was happy enough to get it. In terms of cons, like I said, I would have liked a little crowd work. I would have liked a little bit more from early era Nine Inch Nails, but, like, overall, I wasn't mad at the set list or anything. Or the performances were fantastic. I don't know that we needed an hour of Boys Noize. I'm just gonna say that. Like, I think he did a great job for what he did, but, like, I don't know that we needed an hour of it. I think half hour probably would have worked just fine. I guess that would be a bit of a con in that, like, I didn't mind Boys Noize being there, but, like, again, I'd love to see him with, like, a proper band to support. But, and yeah, I mean, just overall, it was an incredible experience. I loved it. So if I'm gonna go over there and give it a grade, I mean, I'm gonna have to go over there and give it an A. Like, it was Nine Inch Nails. It exceeded my expectations. Just the level of production. Again, I love, even though, yeah, I would have liked some more Pretty Hate Machine era stuff. I love that they represented all the eras of Nine Inch Nails. Yeah, it wasn't the set list I would have personally picked out for every single thing, but they hit the notes you expected them to hit, and then also tossed in some stuff there that you weren't expecting. And at least for me, man, like, I was, even the cons aspect of it, minimal at best. Like, again, the Boys Noize thing, like, yeah, there's other artists I would have liked to have seen him tour with, but, especially given that Boys Noize went over there and actually contributed to the actual act itself for certain songs, fuck it, man, it was awesome. So I absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing. And yeah, I don't have, like, a good outro for this thing that I do, so I'm just going to go over there and say, folks, always go over there when you can. Try to support local music. Buy merch if you're going to go to shows. It really is important for the bands and stuff. That's how they keep running. Don't be a dick if you're in the crowd. I want to really emphasize that. Try to be a good person, to those around you. Don't get wasted before the show or during the show, please. I know a lot of people, I'm not saying don't drink, but please don't get wasted, because you will become a burden to those around you. So, but keep fucking doing it. Keep live music alive. Fuck yeah!